All right, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, sure. My name is Dennis Breitkreutz. I am running for Precinct Chair 203 in Rains County. This position is really geared towards the Republican Party to get the voters' input on things, to help build a platform, and also build local community consensus and voices on our commissioners' court and public officials here to make sure our feedback is heard. And that's kind of the position I'm running for.
Awesome. So, what do you see as the biggest challenge that you're going to face in this role, and how do you plan to handle it?
So I think the biggest challenge is communication. The precinct chair positions have been around for a long time, and the commissioner's court has been around for a long time. And I constantly hear, we don't know what the people are really wanting us to do. We take the information we have, we make decisions. You reach out to the communities. People are busy, they're working, they're tending to their families. And so getting that connection with them, the actual voters, the people, and the people that are making decisions, getting that input together is going to be the toughest challenge, which is the primary role.
And when you step into a situation where you don't already have experience, how do you plan to approach it and move it forward?
So in my career, I'm in IT. I do a lot of implementation. I do a lot of projects, different systems, different business processes. And a lot of times I'm walking into things, I don't really know all the specifics and the details of that particular environment. So what I have found is that I come in with a lot of questions, right? I don't know everything. I don't have it processed. So I will come in and ask questions. I'll ask questions from people that are experts. I'll ask people that are just impacted by things and start to formulate what is the right direction that we should be going on a certain topic or project. And so it really is about getting educated in that process.
And when you're getting that input, how do you weigh conflicting advice?
So a lot of times people will give you advice or input based on emotion. And so I really try to get to the heart of the facts. What is the reality? And you can take people's perspective and their perceptions and weigh it against, the reality of, well, what does that really mean? And then I'll take that and weigh it against, the return on what we're trying to do and kind of judge, is this really worth the effort, the money? Do people need to be educated on something so they have a different perspective? So it really is trying to cut through the emotion and just dealing with the facts of the issues.
What are the limits of this position's authority, and how do you plan to work within those limits to still create positive outcomes for the county?
So this position is a volunteer position. It's not a paid public office position. It's a party position. And so the authority is pretty limited, right? The role is to engage with the constituents, get their feedback, and help recognize and be part of getting that voice united. So the public officials that are in the real positions can hear that and understand what they're supposed to be doing. And so it goes back to, how do I fix that communication problem? So it could be using Facebook. I had some people actually recommend, hey, what about a specific Facebook account for our precinct? Great idea. There's text messaging, there's, websites, not as good. People don't like to interact with websites as other tools. And then maybe regular meetings, just get togethers. What do you think? I think the forums that some of the candidates have put together have been pretty successful for the election. Why don't we continue that?
Wonderful. How do you decide what issues should be prioritized when time, funding, or resources are limited?
So again, my career has always been project-based, and a lot of priorities when you have a lot of different business owners or customers trying to dictate which way you should go on certain things. So I have found that the 80-20 rule works pretty well. 80% of the results are done with 20% of the effort. And if you look at that balance of what your biggest bang for the buck is, and is the return on that effort really worth it? Does it, work financially? Does it work from a safety perspective? And does it work for the benefit of the most people? Then that's how I would list and prioritize the things that I would work on.
And how do you balance listening to the constituents with making tough decisions that may not be popular?
Well, again, it goes back to being a principle-based decision maker, right? So there is right and there is wrong, and there's facts. And sometimes it's hard to get to the bottom of the true reality of what an issue is and what the right solution is. But eventually, with the right communication, the right investigating and research, you'll figure out what the right answer is, and hopefully bring people along with that and get the right decisions made.
Excellent. When a decision that you are involved in draws public criticism, how do you handle that personally and professionally?
Well, I guess it depends on the decision. If it was, a pretty debated topic and there was a lot of arguments for both sides, it could be a challenge to really say, is that the right one or not, right? Hopefully, with the due diligence and the proper methodology and coming up to the final answer, you're going to feel pretty confident. Hey, I know I'm not going to make everybody happy, but it's the right decision. And maybe it doesn't feel that well, but you kind of just know it's the right thing to do.
Excellent. So tell us about a project or situation that didn't go as planned. What did you learn and how did you recover from it?
That's a good one. So early in my career, I did a large implementation, enterprise software implementation, and it was one of the first projects that I had, and it was really big. And so as we started approaching the go live date, as they say, we were finding issues with things, and we were doing trial go lives, and we were finding all kinds of problems and things we missed. And so we didn't make our due date. And so we had to back up. And what I learned from that is really there's a lot more detail that needs to be thought through in planning projects or planning work and making sure that work is truly allocated out, assigned to people, and there's accountability, right? You have to track it. Once you build that plan out, you track it to make sure you're not missing anything and you're meeting the dates and the budgets that are assigned to that project. So it's the details that I learned are really important.
Excellent. And can you share an example of working with someone you strongly disagreed with to reach a solution?
Well, I had a situation one time at a company where I was a vice president at this company, and another vice president and I were in two different departments, but he felt like he knew my department as well as his and kept interjecting in. So it wasn't just necessarily trying to solve a problem, it was a consistent battle on responsibilities and accountability for each of our departments. So what we ended up having to do over a little bit of time was really trying to set clear boundaries and really reiterate each of our roles, what our responsibilities were. And then in those touch points where we had to actually work together on stuff, we kind of just knew we could work through those things without too much difficulty because we had the boundaries set.
Excellent. How will you make sure rural residents, smaller communities, and people without a loud voice are heard?
Well, it goes back again to, first of all, having a mechanism, whatever that's going to be, Facebook, texting, email, to give them a channel. First of all, they need to be able to just send me information, get information into the precinct chair. And once I have that, I'll be able to collect things and start formulating stuff and have feedback. And once we have a new, prospect of something coming into Rains County that we need to discuss, that mechanism will be in place. Then I can help consolidate all that, where it's not just a single voice; it's the voice of everybody that can be heard. And whether they can show up at a certain meeting or it can just be documented, their voice will be portrayed in communicating to the government officials that are helping to make those decisions.
Excellent. How will you handle situations where a decision could benefit someone you know personally, politically, or financially?
Well, hopefully, all decisions are going to benefit people, whether I know them or don't know them. But if you're looking at a situation where it might be perceived as favoritism, or going to help one person but not others, I would tend to stay away from those because that's really not the point of a government decision and how decisions should be made. For the county, it should benefit, if not everybody, the majority of the people in the county for sure, and help alleviate what I find today is a lot of liberties being taken away from the masses. We're being overtaxed. And so if there's things that are helping one person, but it could help others in tax relief, we should look at it from that point of view.
But now, how do you balance data, expert guidance, and lived experience when making decisions that affect the county?
So the technical piece, the data, the research is important because that's the science, right? That's going to tell you the reality of what works, what doesn't work, what the risks are. Experience is going to be more around, um, in general, how do the people take things? What are they going to, perceive as right or wrong? So I tend to think that my balance and the way I'm going to prioritize it is going to be more on educating and getting the input back from the people once they understand the reality of the facts. And that's really going to be the key in how I think things can be determined in the future.
Excellent. At the end of your term, how should residents measure whether you were successful in this role?
I would think that after the term, if we've been able to influence the commissioner's court or the sheriff's department or whoever is in authority to actually do the work that they were elected to do in favor of the people, and we recognize that, that would be really the key accomplishment. That's the end goal.
Okay. So that could answer my next question, and if it does, that's fine. But just in case, if you could realistically accomplish only one meaningful improvement during your term, what would it be and why?
So a very similar answer, but again, it goes back to, I think we have gotten away from the foundations of what America is based on, and that government is really here to protect the God-given rights of the American people, and we should be looking at everything we do in our decision-making process. Does it do that? And today it could be one scenario, another scenario, but we should be looking at it from a standpoint: are we really helping the population? Are we helping people? They are the boss, and so we need to be able to do that. So if I can see a change in that perception of how we interact with our officials or elected officials, then that would be
Now, these questions are the community requested
okay.
questions, and the first couple go over taxes, funding, and county resources. The first one is regarding property taxes and appraisal oversight. What is your stance on reducing or eliminating property taxes for homeowners, and do you believe there should be limits or additional oversight on the Rains County Appraisal District and its board of directors?
I think property taxes has reached the end of its life. The time to get rid of it is here. Governor Abbott has even floated ideas on ways to remove property taxes. So from the bottom up, grassroots perspective, we should all be thinking about, well, how can we do that? Because one of the key cornerstones of our freedoms in America is being a property owner, and that provides a better community because we have pride and ownership and accountability because we own property. But when you constantly tax or increase tax, then all of a sudden that ownership really isn't ownership anymore. It's a perpetual renting process, and you don't really own that. And so we need to stop that and come up with other ways to provide revenues for the services that are needed, and maybe manage it better. So I'm definitely for working towards removing property taxes.
So would this be also a great example of a topic that you would be able to communicate with the constituents and
Yes,
find out what they're looking for and
absolutely.
propose the plans that you read, from Abbott and everything to them to see who. So this would be one of the ways your church would step in.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. I'm learning too. Sorry. Non-tax funding for animal services. What steps would you take to pursue grants, fundraising, or other non-tax funding to support an animal control officer or animal shelter or services in Rains County?
So I'm not a big fan of grants. I think those need to be looked at pretty hard because sometimes there's hooks and strings attached to them that all of a sudden we're being asked to provide information on people or things that really aren't what I think constitutional. As far as animal control goes, yeah, I think fundraising is a great idea. I think businesses could help in some capacity to offload the cost of that. But I've also know that there's a program. I can't remember the name of it. I think there's one in Greenville where they take strays. You turn them in, and they take them, and they provide all the medical, spaying and all the shots that the animal needs, and then they set them up for adoption. So there are services that actually take animals and help, get them homes. And so I think we need to look at some opportunities of how can we utilize those services that are already in place, maybe work with the veterinaries and their connections to help.
Next question is regarding infrastructure and traffic safety regarding Highway 19 and 69 intersection. What actions, if any, would you support to improve traffic flow and safety at the Highway 1969 intersection?
Yeah. So the first thing that I think about every time I drive through there is, why do I have to go through a light and then 30 feet later I'm at a four-way stoplight? Right? Can we remove half of that? They should be a thoroughfare. I'm sorry, it is the courthouse. It's our center of town, but we could probably alleviate some of that stress by opening that up. Maybe look at the traffic, do some analysis, and do some better timing. Maybe certain times of the day or certain times of the month when we have the auction going on, that the light timing is different, and that should be engineered a little better. First of all, I know there's a lot of conversations on overpasses or loops and things, but that again is going to require a lot of tax money and how we're going to fund it. So I think there's some short-term stuff we could look at first.
Next question is regarding technology, privacy, and public trust with Flock license plate recognition cameras. Recently, Flock automatic license plate recognition cameras have been installed in parts of Breitkreutz County, including multiple cameras near the FM 47 and Highway 276 intersection. First question, what is your position on the use of these cameras in the county? And then also, some cities have discontinued their use due to concerns about privacy, accountability, and legal risk. Are you willing to review or reevaluate these systems, and what safeguards do you believe should be in place if they are used? So the first question is, what is your position on the use of these cameras in the county?
I think they're beginnings of oversteps of surveillance, right? We don't need cameras monitoring traffic lights for speeders or people that are running like right. We don't need that. Okay, we don't need to have our license plates tracked. And of course, I think there's data that ties to your vehicle, maybe not to you personally, but it's still kind of reaching into tracking things that can be tied to people. And so I'm definitely against that. I think the other question was, what could we do to help with that?
Are you willing to review or reevaluate
Yes.
these systems, and what safeguards do you believe should be in place if they are used?
Yes. So they should be reviewed, because I'd be curious to understand how often are they being activated, like who's looking at the videos. Do we not have any constraints or restrictions on who can do that? Could we look at maybe only allowing that to happen when a warrant's issued, right? I mean, it's, really kind of close to invading privacy, so maybe having that reviewed. Or you could also have the sheriff's department publicize when they're going to review it and what they're reviewing it for, so we all know when and where and how. Because I appreciate the fact that it's just the sheriff's department, but people are people, and sometimes you get someone that's not really, that good. Maybe they're checking on people. They want to know if their friends are driving there. So we need to have some safeguards against that kind of behavior.
Excellent. Last community question, environmental protection and future development. This is in regards to lithium mining and water protection.
Mhm.
With lithium mining potentially coming to Breitkreutz County in the future, what is your plan to protect local water systems and ensure residents continue to have access to safe, clean drinking water?
So progress is always happening. And I go back and think about the oil industry, and I can only imagine what was going on back when they started doing that stuff. So lithium, again, is the next new big thing. And I guess Range County is sitting on one of the biggest deposits, out there, which is, I guess, good. But we need to plan, right? So we need to not just sit back and let the industry dictate how they're going to extract or how they're going to manage this. We need to be proactive and understand what Range County needs out of this process, and let us dictate and benefit us. I do know that I think Brightstar is a current company that's looking and doing some discovery, and I think one of the ways they want to extract it is called direct lithium extraction, which is pulling it out of the brine and then replacing the water, which is one of the more conservative, better methods. And they're also utilizing existing wells, gas wells, and oil well infrastructure to help with some of that. So it's good to hear they're kind of thinking already about minimizing impact to the Rains County residents. But I really think we need to really dig into that and understand what does Rains County need out of this, and set up our regulations, our processes, our limits, right, and help protect us.
Excellent. So obviously this is for our Facebook page. So are there any Facebook questions you've seen posed or any online questions that you want to speak to?
No, I think you covered a lot of information here, so I appreciate that, and made me think a little bit, and I hope people really appreciate the thought that went into answering the questions.
Awesome. And is there anything you'd like to say to the people?
So the only thing I can say is I'm running for this position because I feel like the communication has been pretty lean, if at all. People are busy, and I know that, and the commissioner's court and the sheriff's department and all the other city officials, they're all busy, they're working hard. We need to come together. We need to figure out how to make this a better place at Rains County, and communicating and bringing that together is what I want to do. I don't think we've had any of that to date. And so that's what I'm looking to do. And if that is something you would like to have in Rains County, then please vote for me on March 3rd.